Let's spend 10 minutes on this. The pressure to keep doing what's always been done because changing it might really rock the boat. You would never say this out loud, but deep down, you are wondering, is our model still working or are we just too afraid to change it? That's a dangerous question to say out loud, though. Here's the truth, though. Churches, they rarely drift into irrelevance because they stop loving Jesus. They drift because they don't stop doing ministry like it's 1995. And by the time anyone realizes the model isn't working anymore, it's already showing up in lower attendance, burned out volunteers, and a nagging sense that something is missing. So let's kind of get clear on at least one thing. Your mission is sacred, your model is not. Your model is just a strategy. Strategy is not sacred. The mission is, but every strategy was built for a moment, a need, like a specific season or a culture, a community. But when that moment shifts and the strategy doesn't, you start serving the model instead of serving the mission. And I'll tell you what, and you know this, healthy churches, they don't fear change. They evaluate it. They're willing to do some things, right? Healthy churches are willing to let go of programs that once worked but no longer do anymore. Healthy churches are they are willing to realign staff roles with today's needs. They are willing to rethink their systems and rhythms and their goals. This is a big one. Healthy churches, they're willing to kill sacred cows with clarity and grace. You know what a sacred cow is, right? It's that thing that you've been doing for a long time, but you're not allowed to even evaluate if you should be doing it. It's so ingrained in your DNA, it's almost become who you are, not what you do. That's a sacred cow. Healthy churches, though, they don't have those. They're willing to evaluate anything, and they're going to do it with clarity and grace. Of course, the last thing healthy churches do, they're willing to innovate before there's a crisis. Because leadership, it's not about protecting what was. Leaders, great leaders, are all about creating what could be. So let me talk through some really practical steps for you to consider this week. Let me give you a question. I'd love for you to process this with your team. It could be your staff team, your volunteers, core volunteers, maybe your board elders, whoever are your trusted kind of advisors, whoever are a part of the they that helps you run the church. Ask this question. What's one part of our church that is no longer helping us reach our mission? And what could we do instead? That one question can change everything about your church. Now, mind you, it's not going to change everything overnight, but over time, it absolutely could because it invites honesty. It invites ownership. And I love this. It invites possibility. You don't need to overhaul everything, but you need to start somewhere. And most importantly, you got to go first. You got to change something. You got to figure out if it's not working, what are we going to do about it? And I think you know this, right? Change doesn't begin with a whiteboard or it doesn't even necessarily begin with a consultant. I mean, I'm happy to help and I do a lot of church consulting, but it really starts with a leader who is brave enough to ask the hard question, to name the drift, to say out loud, things aren't working as well as they could be, and I'm not willing to not do something about it. That's what a great leader will do. I don't in any way want to suggest that, I am or have ever been a great leader, but I'll tell you this, one thing that I have always been maybe a little too comfortable with is change. I think some of that's my personality, but when I got to Woodstock City, it was called Watermark in the very beginning. And a lot of you probably know this story, so I won't go into it too much. But when I got to Watermark in the very beginning, there was a lot of stuff that was good. There was a lot of stuff that needed to change, a lot. We had some great staff members, but we had to change a few as we grew. Not because they were bad people, but they were incredible people. But just culturally, they weren't the kind of people that we probably needed to go where we were going. Those were really hard changes to make. We had to change a lot about our model and how we thought about executing church services, how we formed small groups, how we dealt with volunteers, how we gave away ministry for volunteers. All of those things were model oriented. Here's the thing, though. As we grew from, a revitalization opportunity of, maybe 200 people, it's actually not that few people. We had a decent number of people. Now there were 600 or 700 before I got there, and a lot of them had left just because of really a lack of leadership. And so, we were left with a lot of great people, but a lot of great people had also kind of taken off. And so as we grew, though, within a year we had grown to about 1,000, which is incredible. I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, and I'm not the reason by myself for sure. But as we grew, it was interesting to see how we had to change things. Because what got us through that initial revitalization, and it went way quicker than most, so I recognize that. But what got us, from having $400 in the bank to being pretty financially stable, the things that got us there weren't going to get us there. You know that phrase, and that's how things are. As we grew, and as our community shifted, and as demographics shifted, and as ministry shifted, we had to shift. The model that we ran to kind of get us out of the pit wasn't the same model that we could keep running once we got a little bigger. And I couldn't lead the same way. I mean, that's how models work. Think of it this way for a minute. I love this illustration. You would never go overseas on a mission trip. You've probably done this. You would never go, I'll pick a place I've been, to Nairobi in Kenya. You would never go to Nairobi, Kenya, and walk into kind of the slum areas there with your ministry model here from the US or from wherever you're listening to. Why? Well, the culture is so dramatically different. So you go in as a missionary, and you go in to understand who they are, why they are, what they need, what speaks to them. And you would build a model. If you were going to plant a church somewhere like that, you would build a model that met them where they are. Well, that's what we have to do here. That's what we have to do in your church. Of course, the hard part is that doing it in your church means often undoing what you've been doing. And that's the hard part. You may have created the model that you're currently in. And so to undo what you created, which by the way, at one point really worked, that's really, really challenging. Let me kind of close with this though. You weren't called to preserve what was. You're called to build what could be, right? So we've got to stop serving the model. We have to start serving the mission. If we're going to be loyal to anything, we have to be loyal to the mission, which means whatever the mission requires, we are willing to do. If you need help kind of carrying that pressure during this season, there's lots of places you can get help. I have some tools that could help you, some free tools. I have assessments, coaching options. If you go to gavinadams.com, you'll find all sorts of things that could help you that are free. And if you want to do some real cheap things, there's some inexpensive things that you could, check out first, or you can just schedule a conversation with me. I'd love to spend 15 minutes with you, listen to a little bit of the pressure that you're facing, and at least tell you what I have done if I have experienced it too. But for now, start with that question. And I'll tell you this, that's where real courage begins, with a person just like you.